welcome to AUSU's Undergraduate Research Week. We've heard from many of you that you want more resources and opportunities surrounding research. So one of the things we're doing this week is introducing you to people who've either done research as undergraduates or are connected to undergraduate research at AU. And today I want to introduce you to MacKinley Darlington, AU's Knowledge Mobilization Specialist. Welcome, MacKinley. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks for coming. So to start, can you tell us a little bit about what your role is and what you do at AU and what is knowledge mobilization?
Sure. So as Karen mentioned, I'm the Knowledge Mobilization Specialist here at AU. We're in the Research Center and primarily support researchers in reaching their knowledge mobilization goals, whatever that may be. So a big thing with knowledge mobilization is sort of maybe I'll just actually step back and just provide you with a bit of a definition, and then we can jump off into what that actually looks like. So knowledge mobilization is used to describe a wide range of activities related to the production and use of knowledge generated throughout research processes. It's important to think about this not just sort of at the end of research when you've got your findings in place, but think about this kind of throughout that process. So from inception all the way to potential impact of research. But ultimately, when we're thinking about knowledge mobilization, it's really about making research useful to society by getting new knowledge and evidence into the hands of those best positioned to use it. If we think about knowledge mobilization as a bit of an umbrella term, we can use it to describe a variety of activities associated with engagement, co-creation, so community engaged scholarship, partnered research even, knowledge synthesis and exchange, so that analysis kind of piece, as well as experiential and work integrated learning activities within a research context. So that can all kind of fit under that umbrella of knowledge mobilization. But again, let's come back to thinking about ultimately that knowledge mobilization is about making research useful to society and connecting those dots, getting knowledge into the hands of those who can use it, who can make change, positive change in the world.
Cool. So when students think about research, either when they're doing their own project or working as a research assistant, or thinking about grad school, they tend to think about essays. That's the first place their minds usually go. But how else can students consider sharing their work, and why is that valuable?
Sure. So, knowledge mobilization involves developing and executing strategies, plans, activities, developing knowledge products like a paper. But it really is about sort of delivering that new knowledge generated through research to that target audience. And that can happen in a variety of ways, depending on who your audience is. So it's really common that a target audience for research is others in academia. So that might be peers, other researchers, students, professors, instructors, academic administrators. They tend to use new data, evidence, and knowledge to support their own learning and research activities, and then to further enhance their fields. This is where the more traditional research paper or essay, conference presentation, even manuscript fits into the knowledge mobilization equation. But we can also think about mobilizing directly to non-academic knowledge users, so practitioners, policymakers, community leaders, or even members of the general public. For example, a classroom teacher could really benefit from having access to the most recent research related to student mental health in a hybrid online in-person learning environment. So how do we get the research, the results, those findings into the hands of folks who can use it in a meaningful way?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was going to say, at AU, we are an open university, and our research contributions, we tend to jointly prioritize output and impact. So not just, a paper is an output. You've summarized your research findings in a type of output. But we also want to think about how those findings can inform change. So the impact side of things. So is the paper a best way to reach that classroom teacher, or is there another way that you can reach your target audience group to get that new knowledge into action?
Can you tell us about different ways students might do that? Like if they're not going to do an essay, or they're going to do an essay and something else, what would that something else be?
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's a really good question. And it really depends. I think whenever I'm giving advice on knowledge mobilization, I always sort of like to have people think about their audience and how their audience likes to receive information. And if you don't know, it's all right to ask them, so if your audience really big into social media, there's, a lot of people using Twitter or TikTok, that might be a really good way to help mobilize knowledge to reach that audience. Gives you a little bit of a creative output as well, and can layer onto an existing activity like writing a paper. We don't want to lose sort of that academic side of things in knowledge mobilization, but we do want to make that accessible to folks. So, something like an infographic, for instance, so a visual representation of research findings is a really nice accompaniment to a paper. It can point to that paper if people want more information or want to do a deeper dive into that. So thinking about ways to complement work, not to replace existing methods necessarily, but to build on that in ways that are meaningful. So if we're thinking about our audience these days, in particular a non-academic audience, although there is lots of folks in academia who are looking to receive information and new knowledge in multimedia types of formats, we might want to think about, how our audience, especially as a result of COVID, have relied a lot on digital first strategies for receiving information. So social media, podcasts, websites, Google searches, land people where they want to find new information. So if we're thinking about, our audience wanting that on-demand access to new information, we also want to think about being able to provide that information in a format that meets their needs. So that's, always something to think about. I think websites have kind of had a new resurgence through COVID, with people spending more time online trying to get information rather than, maybe a more traditional activity of going to research talks at a library or doing something in a physical kind of space. And that is something that AU actually specializes in, is sort of the digital research and mobilization piece. So thinking creative, the sky's the limit, but do put yourself in your audience's shoes, and figure out how they might like to receive information. If you don't know, you can ask them, as I mentioned, but you could also ask trusted resources. So say your target audience is nurses. And you're in a nurse education program here at AU, you might want to talk with your instructors about how to connect with folks in that field. You can always chat with me, the knowledge mobilization specialist in the research center, but there's also a lot of resources available, and maybe we'll get to those in a couple of minutes, but there's lots here at AU that can help you think about your research and the mobilization potential a little bit differently.
All right, and how can the library help? Like, are there resources through the library or through AU that students should know that they exist?
Absolutely. There's actually a few, there's a really excellent Power Ed course that's open and available, offered through AU. It's about multimodal mobilization. So really tapping into sort of the different ways to get new information to folks and how to layer those up. So it's not just, I want to read a research report. It's how do I visually prepare this information? How do I prepare this information for an audience who likes to listen or to watch graphics or video? So I'd really recommend the Power Ed course that is available here at AU. It's free of charge, open to anybody. And there's also opportunity through the Research Center and some of the activities that we've got going on. So Idea Lab in particular. So this is a digital first research asset that Athabasca University has, and we offer it in partnership with Amazon Web Services. And the really interesting part of this, so the target demographic is faculty member researchers, but there's a really excellent opportunity for research assistants to get involved in supporting digital first research and mobilization through Idea Lab. The opportunity for students is called the Idea Lab Academy. I'd encourage everybody to check that out and think about applying to be a research assistant in that space. There's lots of excellent training available, both for doing research in sort of that cloud-based environment, but also mobilizing digitally. And you also would be involved in that real world sort of experience of research, so that experiential learning opportunity that will translate really well into the future in academia or beyond, in those more real world settings.
That's great. Thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.